still very real like, in the world of college athletics. It's still something we have to consider. But I remember coming to your campus for a meeting, just being such a unique school yourself. And you'll learn this is going to be just a general conversation about the roadmap to college recruitment at all levels. This isn't a pitch for Mass Maritime, but it is what we know and love. So we'll definitely use it for some examples today. But it was really just two niche institutions that we wanted to connect. So COVID happened. The world kind of turned upside down on its head, but we're so excited to have that relationship move forward now that we're pretty much, I would say, fingers crossed, back to normal. And so our director of football operations, Jackson Latimer, like you said, was just up at your campus to kind of do a quick reintroduction and highlight something that you said prior to starting this call. We hear it so often that, student athletes will say, well, I don't know if I'm good enough to play at the college level. That's a big part of this conversation that we wanted to talk about today. I think it's really important to be realistic with your expectations, and we'll talk about all the things when we talk about the word realistic, what we're talking about, your athletic ability, your academic performance, what financially is going to be an option for you. And we'll cover the broad spectrum of all those things that you should be considering. But I will say, having played at the Division III level, we have someone who has played at the D2 level and gone through that recruitment process, which looks a little bit different. There is a place, I believe, for everyone, whether that's at the club or, D3, D2, D1, NAIA. We'll kind of talk about all of it today. So quickly before we start, I'll let Jackson, if you want to introduce yourself, and then Kathy, just so they know the face, and then I'll throw it back to you throughout the presentation.
Awesome. Thank you, Michaela. So like Kate said earlier, my name's Jackson Latimer. I'm one of the assistant football coaches here at Massachusetts Maritime Academy, the director of football operations and quarterbacks coach. I'd say the biggest thing tonight, we're going to throw a lot at you guys from, different levels. There's a different process for everybody. Just absorb it, be a sponge, ask questions. If there's something that's not clear, don't hesitate to reach out to one of us. We're here to help you guys, and I'm excited to talk to everyone tonight.
And Kathy?
Thanks. Can you hear me? I'm struggling with my sound here, sorry. And I'm Kathy Kedsky, Director of Student Financial Services here at Mass Maritime. Going to answer or kind of wrap up at the end and certainly answer any questions anybody has about the whole financial aid process and where that fits in as you're looking at schools.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Okay, so I kind of touched on it briefly in my introduction, but we wanted to start out giving everyone an idea of what the college athletics landscape really looks like, because I think it can be really daunting to start to identify where you could even fit in. One statistic that's actually interesting is the amount of people who make it and have the ability to play at the collegiate level. And it's really this great opportunity, whether you get to play, like I said, in any of the divisions, but the statistics that I brought today are from the NCAA. So for example, across all sports, the percentage of people moving from high school to the NCAA is only 7%. So if you think about everyone in your high school currently, about 7% of those people are going to take that next step. And some people choose not to, right? Some people might have the ability and choose that they want a different balance in their academic career after high school. So they might want to, go into a really rigorous academic program at a school that doesn't afford them the opportunity to play at that level. So everyone's going to make different decisions based on what's best for them. And we want to talk through what those different factors could be today. So like I said, so we're an NCAA institution, which is our governing body. So basically what the NCAA does, they give us all of our rules and guidelines, from anything to student athlete safety to the actual recruiting mechanisms and financial aid, merit aid that we can use to attract those students to our institutions. So Massachusetts Maritime Academy is an NCAA Division III institution, but there are different, different schools that fit in, different conferences, different competition levels throughout Division III. So I will say personally, when I was in high school, I definitely fell into the category of, oh, I don't know if I'm good enough to play in college. And then when I started to look at schools at the Division III level, there was a pretty big discrepancy in the level of competition, even amongst D3 institutions. Jackson played football at a Division II institution. and they have different eligibility requirements. So Division III institutions, let's say, are able to set their own academic requirements. So let's say you have to have a 1.8 in your freshman year to continue to participate. Whereas if you're on scholarship at a D1 or D2 school, those academic requirements might be higher. So these are all things as you go through the process to consider. NAIA schools, they're becoming actually more popular. They're completely independent from the NCAA. And they're these really interesting places that can pretty much do whatever they want financially in attracting you to their institution. So we kind of think of them as the Wild West of college athletics right now. They can offer you a really, really big athletic scholarship that at other, levels in the NCAA are really regulated more strictly. So NAIA is something that's really emerging in college athletics. Not as big, I would say, in this area in the Northeast, but definitely when you looked down south in the Midwest, schools that might not geographically be around a lot of other schools become NAIA because there's less restrictions on their travel, the number of games that they have to play, stuff like that. Junior college is also an option where you can play some competitive post-high school athletics. But a lot of times the students who are going to junior college are going there to get an academic boost to send them to that next level of, let's say, a 4-year institution that they're looking to get into that right out of high school they might not be academically prepared for. But junior college can still offer a very competitive athletic experience, a well-rounded athletic experience, but those are typically 2-year institutions where you would earn an associate's degree or maybe stay for 1 year. One thing I do want to say, if you're considering junior college or even community college, that does count towards your athletic eligibility. So as a college athlete, if you're going to play at an NCAA institution, there's only so many years that you can do that. It's kind of surprising seeing, the championship winning quarterback down in Georgia was 26, but because of COVID, a lot of people's athletic career have been extended a lot longer. So typically you only get 4 years to play within a certain window of time. And once you start your clock, it doesn't stop. So you'll have 4 athletic years. There are something called redshirt years. The NCAA just actually passed a mental health waiver. So certain students who might come to school and be struggling mentally can file just like you would for a broken leg for a mental health waiver. So that's actually a really positive development that's happened in the NCAA. But there is a certain clock for you to play in college. And then I talked about there being a place for everyone, especially on larger campuses. We're so fortunate in the state of Massachusetts to be so saturated with institutions of higher education, but some of the club programs could honestly be competitive, like NCAA D3 or D2 programs at some of these bigger schools like a UNH or a UMass Amherst. Their club programs are very rigorous. So that's also an option for you if you don't want the commitment to be part of a varsity program. Club is always an option. And whatever schools you're looking at, I encourage you to check out what that option may be. So I'm going to move into the next slide to talk a little bit. Coach Latimer, would you mind speaking a little bit to Division I and Division II, the differences there in NCAA?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, if we're looking at the Division I, obviously category first, you look at the number of schools that are in Division I right there. It's 363 in total. The training, the practices, the year-round commitment, it's very rigorous, like we were just talking about, and it's competitive because you got to know that everyone who is going to be at the Division I level has earned, the opportunity to get an athletic scholarship. And a lot of these scholarships at the Division I level pay for full tuition. So it's very competitive. It's very rigorous. And, people who really get into that category, they're extremely lucky. Now, looking at the Division II level, as you can see, there's obviously less schools. There's 313 Division II schools in the country. I would say, from my personal experience, it is a more balanced lifestyle. As you can see right there, there's 60% of student athletes that receive athletic aid. I was fortunate enough to receive a partial athletic scholarship where I played at. However, it doesn't cover your full tuition compared to a Division I school. The biggest thing at Division II levels, which can help almost compare to the Division I level, is between academic grant money and financial aid packaged with the athletic scholarship can piece together a really good package for families. So, just because, you don't get a Division I scholarship, it's really not the end of the world. Getting a Division II scholarship is just as helpful because of all the other resources that you can piece together with it at the end of the day.
Definitely. Thank you. And then this is obviously our bread and butter, Division III. Division III is the largest sector of the NCAA. There's 442 NCAA Division III institutions. So when we're looking at playing opportunities and roster spots, that's really where the most opportunities are to take that step at the next level. There are no athletic scholarships offered at the Division III level. So we'll hear all the time someone saying, oh, my son or daughter is going to, if it's Mass Maritime on a soccer scholarship. They're definitely not. And if they are, we're getting reported to the NCAA. What more than likely is happening is that they have a really competitive merit aid package, which we offer scholarships for 3.0 plus GPAs coming right out of high school. And then we also offer, more holistic, well-rounded, not full scholarship, but really competitive scholarships that take into consideration things like your extracurriculars, community service, yes, your grades, but more well-rounded who you are as a person. And those opportunities are going to be available at most Division III institutions. So, and then Kathy will get into this later, but there's also opportunities at this level for need-based aid, which everyone eventually will hear about the FAFSA. It can sound really daunting. I remember it was to myself and my family. That's Kathy's bread and butter. I try not to get into it too much, but the FAFSA is going to tell you and your family what your expected family contribution is to whatever school that you might be going to. There's some really great institutions that will actually help cover the gap between what the federal government is saying that you have to pay and what their institution actually costs. And there's grants, loans, really low interest loans available. Again, I try not to get into that too much. Kathy will cover it towards the end. So just because you're playing at a Division III institution that might cost, the same as a Division I institution, you say, how am I going to ever afford this? There's a lot of really competitive financial aid packages out there. So we encourage you to apply. A lot of coaches will actually give you a fee waiver to apply to their institution. And, those can be offered to anyone with financial need, but a lot of student athletes will have access to those. Hey, we'd really like you to apply. Here's a fee waiver. So it could cost you nothing to take a chance on an institution who could actually, give you a really competitive financial aid package. So don't rule anyone out. And the other thing I want to mention about Division III institutions, there's a lot more opportunities to be a multi-sport athlete. So here at Mass Maritime, we're actually pretty unique. We have a waiver from the NCAA to not have winter sports. And it's because we have a training ship, which currently they were just in Barbados. I don't know where they're going to be this week. I wish I was there personally, although I love being here with you all. But we don't really have any students here in the winter. So we don't have any winter sports. So we have fall and spring. I would say about half of my women's lacrosse team also plays a sport in the fall. People, coaches at the Division I, Division II level, especially if you're on scholarship, they're a little less likely to be flexible with your schedule and allow you to play multiple sports, especially if you're on scholarship in one, risking injury. At that point, they could be losing a scholarship kid. So Division III, if you're a multi-sport athlete looking to continue multiple sports, is probably going to be one of your best options. Okay, now we'll talk about finding your match. Again, this can seem like a very, very daunting process. When I was in high school, I was convinced I wanted to be a dermatologist. So I applied to every single school as pre-med. My senior year, I took AP biology, and no word of a lie, I think I got an 8, like a 0.8 on my first AP biology test. And I was like, I don't think the doctor route is probably going to be working out for me. So I quickly shifted to some other school. So being realistic with yourself about school type and academic fit, what major you're looking for, is really important. Now, I don't expect that most high school juniors, seniors know what their, dream career is going to be, but you want to go to a place that's going to help you figure that out. So asking important questions like, do you have internships available? Do you have co-ops available? A lot of times people go to college to figure out what it might be that they want to do. Another Mass Maritime example, we only have 7 majors. We're a pretty specialized school. So usually someone coming in undecided, I'm a little bit leery of, like, oh, okay, we only have 7 majors. So I hope you can figure one out here. But again, like a larger state institution, like a UMass Amherst, UMass Lowell, is going to have a lot more academic offerings for you to go figure out. Going back to the athletic piece, skill level and team fit, again, being realistic, having those conversations with, if you play at the club or travel level, with your coaches. Hey, coach, I know you're super experienced in this. Where do you see me going, being a good fit to go? They probably have a short list of schools for you in their mind. I'm a club coach for the Aces lacrosse team out of Plymouth. Most of my kids, I could tell them, right down to what type of conference I think that they would be a good fit in. So you really want to lean on your resources, your high school coaches, guidance counselors, athletic directors, anyone who knows you and knows the type of student athlete that you are is probably going to be pretty honest with you about, what your options are. That doesn't mean not to reach out to coaches at your reach schools. I absolutely encourage you to do that. But starting to make a short list of what schools you think you could be competitive at and deciding, what kind of player do I want to be for that school? Do I want to be an impact player or I just want to be on the team? There's nothing wrong with either of them, but you can find a fit based on, where you see your role being in that program. Establishing a recruiting plan and contacting coaches. This is going to become critically important, especially in your junior year. That's a really pivotal year in the recruiting process. And then finances and scholarships. At the end of the day, you could, fall in love with an institution. I definitely had a ton of schools on my list that my parents said, yeah, if we sell our house, you can definitely go there. But at the time, it probably wasn't going to be in the cards. A lot of people probably haven't. I know when I was in high school, I didn't know anything about what a student loan payment looked like after college. And some of my friends have a student loan payment that is as much as my mortgage. So just when you factor in some of those things, having those conversations with whoever the decision makers or whoever might be co-signing a loan, or if you're a high school student who is going to be taking a loan in your own name, there's plenty of calculators online that you can put in. If I graduate with X amount of debt, this is what my monthly payment is going to look like 4 or 5 years from now. So those are all important things to consider when you're deciding, not only where you're going to go play, but where you're going to get your education. So school type. So I'll let Coach Latimer start with a few of these, and then you can throw it back to me whenever you want. But school type is definitely one of the first things you should start thinking about. You're going to college to earn a degree, to hopefully have a career one day. So you really want to start to decide the best place for you to do that.
Yeah. So, I think the first thing, if we're looking at this slide, is the distance from home. So, it's obviously weighing your factors of, how far do you really want to travel when it comes to going to school and then coming back home. For example, I know we were just referencing Mass Maritime here. We have kids from all over the country that come here. And then we have kids that live 10 minutes from down the road. So the kids who live 10 minutes down the road, their experience is much different than a kid who lives in, who's originally from Florida that comes up here. So I think the biggest thing is, do I want to travel far? Do I want to be a couple of hours away? Do I want to be on the other side of the country? It's really what comes down to what you're comfortable with and where you see yourself. The academic programs, we touched on this earlier. A school like Mass Maritime obviously only has 7 majors, but a lot of other schools offers, 30 plus majors. So really find a school with, something that you're interested in. Don't go to a school just because, maybe the cafeteria is nice or there's something that kind of stands out. That's kind of minor. Think big picture, think long-term. That's going to help you post-graduation. And then the size of the school. Are you a person that wants to go to a school that's 40,000 people, or do you want to attend a school that's 2,000 people? Myself, I went to St. Anselm College, small Division II school, like we were talking earlier. It's 2,000 kids. And that was the perfect thing for me. I didn't want a school of, thousands of kids running around and, you can kind of get lost versus if you're at a small school, everyone, you're familiar with them. And the other thing to that, and it ties back to the academic piece, is, your relationship with your teachers in the classroom. So at a smaller school, the student to faculty ratio can be anywhere from, here at Mass Maritime, it's 13-1. At the much bigger schools, you can be in lecture halls of, hundreds of kids. And for me, I wanted to be able to go up to my teacher after class and they would know my name. I would be able to go see them. And there's a, rapport right there. At a bigger school, you wouldn't really be able to get that just because the number of students that are in the student body. The next piece, the cost, and this obviously is different for everyone. Obviously, what's realistic when it comes to it. If it's, athletic scholarships are in the picture, we talked about need-based aid, academic grant money, find a cost that's really going to help you. That's not going to put you in a bad situation once you graduate. A lot of schools, it varies with what their tuition rate is. I think really look at it and see, because it's a big deciding factor at the end of the day. The last thing that I'll do before I pass it back to Michaela is just the level of academic support. If you are someone that, you always needed, a little extra help in the classroom and it's a really important piece to you, that should be one of the first questions, when you ask a coach or an admissions counselor, anybody at the school. Here at Mass Maritime, we provide all our guys, student athletes, everyone with academic support through Michaela, what is it in the library again? What is it called?
Academic Resource Center.
Yes. So it's open to all our students free of charge. Some schools it may vary depending on if it is charged through tuition, but here, for instance, it's free of charge. And we just want to make sure that, all our guys get as much help as they need at the end of the day. So
Definitely. Thank you so much. So the other thing I wanted to say with the cost that we mentioned, I don't want to harp on it too much, but when we're looking at those D1 and D2 level opportunities, you also want to have the conversation of, so for example, one of my best friends, she ended up transferring here from Clemson, and she was on, it was an Army ROTC scholarship, but she was also on the women's rowing team at Clemson. She had a shellfish allergy that wasn't identified prior, so she lost her Army ROTC scholarship, which then made Clemson pretty much unaffordable, and she ended up transferring to Mass Maritime. So it wasn't an athletic scholarship that she lost, but it was an Army ROTC scholarship that made that possible. But you always want to think, in college athletics, we call it like the broken leg theory. If I broke my leg, would I still want to be at this school? And when it comes to cost, if you're on an athletic scholarship, they'll honor it through the season. But then after that, let's say it was an injury that you're not going to return to sport, it's not a multi-year scholarship. So it might not be honored in your sophomore, junior, senior year. So if I'm going to a place, will this still be financially feasible? If that broken leg happens or whatnot, any variable factors that I'm no longer on athletic scholarship. One of those things at the D1, D2 level that can cause you to lose that athletic scholarship is your academic performance. So I believe at the D1 level, you need to have a 2.3 to remain eligible. And at the D2 level, it's 2.2. So those are some things that, even a lot of coaches might not take a chance on a student right out of school if they don't think they're going to be able to maintain that GPA to keep them scholarship eligible. And that's where you see a lot of those junior college opportunities coming up where they'll say, go prove yourself here, and then we might consider you a really high level player. There's a Netflix documentary or series about it. I can't remember the name of it right now, but for basketball and football, where they send them to JUCO and then they go to the big D1 school. So I would highly recommend to watch that. But the next thing, and this kind of, dovetails from cost into this piece, is your job and career placement. Because if you're going to make, $150,000 a year out of school, then having $80,000 in student debt might not seem that daunting. But let's say that you're someone who wants to go and coach for a living. The ROI might not be there for, $60,000 a year in debt, right? So it's being realistic and looking at, the job market, knowing obviously none of us are, world economists who can predict what the job market is going to look like in 4 years. But, the field that I'm going into, is this going to support the type of student debt or monthly payment that I would probably be carrying out of school? Co-ops and internships or research opportunities are also something that were critically important in my personal education. I actually attended here at Mass Maritime, and we were required to do co-ops and internships. And there's plenty of other schools who do this as well and offer their students the opportunity. So I traveled abroad. I worked on a ship in South Korea and Japan. I traveled to Panama and worked on the Panama Canal. I worked for a shipping company in Houston, Texas. And through all of those things, I figured out that I wanted to coach lacrosse for a living. So that was an interesting journey, but it's so important to go out there and actually work in the area that you might want to go into before making the decision, like, hey, I'm going to move across the country and go take a job with this company. You might show up and be like, oh, this is not what I expected. So co-ops and internships are a really good way to figure out what you like, but more importantly, sometimes what you don't want to do, right? I had all the opportunities in the world when I graduated from college, but the thing I mainly liked about all of those internships was working with people and helping people. So that was something I learned about myself. So there's plenty of institutions that are going to offer you the chance to actually get out and get real world working experience while also being a student and a student athlete. So I definitely encourage you, any school that you go to, any coach that you talk to, hey coach, what are the opportunities for co-ops and internships? And if I had the opportunity to do one, even if it was, overlapped with preseason a little bit, would that be something that you would allow or encourage me to do? Something that I threw in the bottom right corner here, College Board College Search is a really great tool if you're someone who knows some of the things that you already like. I knew, just like Coach Latimer said, I wanted a small school. You plug that in and it will pop out for you a bunch of schools that might be, within your academic or athletic profile. So the next thing we want to talk about is athletic fit. As a coach, it's easier said than done to be realistic with yourself, but you might not know what is realistic, right? You're not a college coach. You don't know what they're looking for. So this is where your coaches come in to be a very critical tool. Coaches, at the end of the day, they want to see you grow and succeed. That's what I love to do. That's why I love coaching. So they're going to be honest with you if you go to them and say, hey coach, I'm starting my recruitment process, let's say in your sophomore year. What's your honest evaluation of what level do you think I should be looking at? Or I want to be an engineer. What engineering schools are really good that I could also compete at? So just asking those conversations and using your resources. Some of you might have parents who played at the collegiate level. So talking to as many people as you can to gather as much information as you can so that you can ultimately make the decision that's best for yourself and make a well-informed decision. Again, we're going to focus on NCAA today. So understanding which pathway you think that you want to go down. NCAA, Division 1, 2, 3, they all carry different requirements. So researching that, what do you want your actual lifestyle to be? Like Coach Latimer said, Division 1, you have a year-round commitment to that team. So my lacrosse players, let's say I get them for 4 weeks in the fall, and then I get them for my entire spring season. I cannot have contact with them outside of those. I mean, I can send them like, hey, hope you're doing well, but I can't be like, hey, what were your times on your mile? And you should be doing this workout program. We can encourage them to do those things, but as a Division 3 coach, I'm pretty much hands off outside of my non-traditional and traditional playing season. At the Division 1 level, your life is, your sport and then academics. Like I said, Division 2, there's a little bit more balance there. But they're all a very different collegiate experience. So as Coach Latimer also said before, if you're someone who's always needed a little bit more academic support, it might not be realistic to be successful both academically and playing at the Division 1 level. So just kind of talking through all of that with your guidance counselors, like I said, use all your resources there. Also, I talked about, understanding yourself and what kind of player that you want to be on a team. Do I want to be an impact player or do I just want to be on the team? That's when you want to look at their current roster competition and talk to the coach about, who they expect to have coming in. What positions are you recruiting? If you're a goalkeeper, maybe they have 4 goalkeepers on the roster and, they're not looking at any openings. They're going to come in, fight for a spot. Is that something you want to do? Quarterbacks, another position. We have a depth chart of 6 quarterbacks. You're probably not going to play until your senior year, if that. Is that something that you want to put in all that work for? And these are all different factors that you can consider when making that decision. It might sway you one way or another, but again, if it's the perfect fit, academic school, cost-wise, maybe that's somewhere where you go and say, I just want to be on the team, be part of the team, and I'm fine not being the starter or not getting significant playing time. Most coaches, again, are going to be pretty honest with you. We're not trying to deceive anyone in the recruitment process, especially at the Division 3 level. You're not on scholarship with us. We're really trying to find a good academic, holistic fit for our institution. Coach Latimer, let me throw it back to you on kind of the coach's interest level. Talk about that a little bit if you can.
Yeah. So, the biggest thing in the recruiting process is, it's a two-way street. Obviously, you want to be able to market yourself to as many schools as possible. But also at the same time, coaches are looking to find athletes, all the time, everywhere. But I think the biggest thing is gauging, how interested certain schools are in you. If you're reaching out, like we had that talked earlier about having that list, and if your list is all Division 1 schools and there's Division 1 colleges that aren't getting back to you, the chances are that maybe you're not a Division 1 player, and that's okay. But if there are 10 Division 3 schools that have been nonstop, wanting to get in touch with you, your high school coach, that is where, your interest should really lean, and then try to gauge from there, what really, needs to be the next step moving forward. But, I think a lot of people get caught up with, just going Division 1. That's how college sports need to be. No, we have plenty of good athletes here at the Division 3 level that very well could have played at the Division 1 level. They just obviously wanted to prioritize their academics, but also playing a Division 3 sport. But really, put it into consideration what, these other coaches are seeing in you. And if, it's not the end of the world if there's a load of Division 2 and Division 3 schools that really want you to come check out campus or come to their prospect camps and want to have a conversation with you, because at the end of the day, they're trying to do their job as well.
Awesome. So we talked about also the scholarship versus non-scholarship, figuring out if it's realistic, if you could go to a school, if you did or didn't get a scholarship. Team culture is huge. There are plenty of people in college sports. I like to call it the name game. So I remember when I was younger, there were certain names in college sports that just, everyone knows, right? The Dukes, Georgia, Syracuse. Chances are the top prospects in the rest of the country also have those schools on their list, right? So when you're going, like Coach Latimer said, a coach is really interested in you. As a coach, I can tell a recruit whatever I want about what my team culture is, but until you meet the team and actually experience that for yourself, you don't really know. So I always give them a chance on a tour. Hey, I'm going to, send you to lunch with the girls on the team, and then you're going to, go before practice and just hang out with them and see how you like it. Just talk to them one-on-one. Ask them whatever you want about me, about the head coach. We're not trying to hide anything here. And, maybe a certain college experience resonates with you more than another. So ask your coach, the recruiting coach, do you offer shadow days? Do you offer a chance for me to come see a practice, come see a game? Watch how the team interacts on the sidelines with each other. Are they celebrating when someone gets a goal or gets a point? Is the coach, screaming their head off, or are they calm? What coaching style have you traditionally responded to? Because you don't want any surprises when you show up there, especially if you're on scholarship. D1 and D2, if you're on scholarship and then you transfer somewhere, you might not be eligible to play that year that you transfer. You might have to wait a whole year to actually play. It's happened to plenty of people. JJ Watt just retired. Happened to him when he transferred, when he was in college. So you don't want to lose, that opportunity to play because you went to, you didn't research the school and the culture and the fit of the school before you went there. So those are all things to consider. Also, travel schedule. This sounds crazy, but I get so car sick. So when I was looking at schools, I was like, I don't want to be on like 8-hour bus rides and taking planes. I went to our conference is called the MassCAC. So we play other Massachusetts state schools. So I think our longest drive is probably to MCLA in North Adams, which is like a 3-hour drive. So I was like, okay, perfect. So just knowing those things about yourself. Do you want to be traveling? Is that something you're interested in for, your competition? Look at their schedule. Who do they play? Academic support, we already touched on this, but asking the coach is really important. What are your safety nets for me if I'm on your team? Are you doing grade checks? Do you have team study hall? Anything like that you might not think will be important in the moment, but transitioning to college academically, even for the best students, I've seen it time and time again, can be really overwhelming. So you want to make sure that there's going to be someone there to help you if you are kind of struggling at first. And then their facilities. So again, not maybe the top thing on your list, but checking out their weight room, their locker room. Do you have the basic facilities to, fit my needs? Okay, Coach Latimer, can you hop on this one about how to get on a coach's radar, the things you should be doing?
Mm-hmm. So there's plenty of, especially nowadays, there's plenty of tools that you guys can use to get in touch with coaches. The first one, it's probably the easiest one. Just go right to, the website of whatever school it is that you want to look at and go fill out their questionnaire. Because once you fill out that questionnaire, the way it's linked, it goes right to our recruiting services, and we get all your information right into our database right away. And we can follow up and say, okay, Jackson Latimer just hit our database. We need to follow up with him because he showed interest in our program. And then we can start the evaluation process. The other ones are obviously email, text, social media. We're going to get to the email, how to format an email later on. Obviously text message, very open as well if coaches communicate their cell phone numbers. Twitter, obviously in football recruiting, is very big. So coaches are obviously following kids all the time, follow them back. Instagram, I would say too, just because of posting workout videos, and just have an open line of communication. If, you want to reach out to a coach, just make sure you're clear and precise on, who you are. If, and it doesn't have to be a paragraph long. It can be brief, but get right to the point and have a little bit of a piece of information about the school and why you're interested. The next stuff, your tournaments, games, and recruiting events. So really, coaches go to all sorts of different things year round, and just to watch kids if it's trying to find certain prospects, but also, like we said, follow up. So if a kid hit our recruiting questionnaire, we want to go obviously see them and meet them in person at some of these events as well. So that's another great opportunity. Highlight reels and recruiting databases. Once you finish up, your season, put together a highlight tape, and it doesn't have to be 8 to 10 minutes long of all these different highlights, anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes. Really, I probably watch, 30 to 50 highlight tapes a day. I only really watch the first 20 to 30 seconds. So put your best plays at the front. And if you're not sure, sit down with your high school coach and have them go through it with you, because they're going to know, what your best plays were from the year, what stands out. And, they've probably been doing it for a very long time. So obviously have someone else look at it right before you start sending it out to college coaches. And then the last piece, campus visits, open house dates, prospect days, just ways to get on, college campuses. Anytime, as long as it's within NCAA guidelines, if you told a college coach, hey, I want to come check out your campus, I would say 99% of the time, they're going to be like, yes, and they'll find a day that works for you. Open houses are great as well, just because you can obviously come meet coaching staffs, but also any sort of other administration that's along there, admissions, financial aid, anyone else that can answer other questions. And then prospect days, really where, it's the best of both worlds. You can meet, obviously there's a talking period, but also there can be an evaluation period of, where you are skill level, and see, can you fit at that school and play athletically.
Yeah, if I could add about the highlight reels. So we both coach field sports, so it might be a little bit different than, let's say, like baseball or, I don't know, volleyball. But something that I, especially at the club level, part of our package coaching clubs, that we're helping them put together their highlight reels. Especially for my attackers, if it's Score Fest 101, it's like goal, 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 and they have like flashing lights and this crazy music. I'm like, coaches also want to see what you're doing off ball, like how you get your teammates open, all these other things. We can see someone score a goal 20 times. That's awesome. But what are you doing, when you're not the goal scorer, or, how are you working on defense to hustle and get back? All of those things are critically important as well. I don't know if anyone saw, this isn't really like question and answer period yet, but this was just something fun. There was an NBA game where one of the players was just stopped with the basketball on the ground running the clock because the other team wasn't playing defense on him. I think it might have been the Charlotte Hornets weren't playing defense. And so he just stood there and took advantage of it. So it is important for coaches to also see. Coaches always want the hardest worker on the field, on the court, on the diamond, whatever it is. We want to see your work ethic. We want to see what kind of teammate you are. How you make that come through in a highlight reel, you can only do so much. So that's why the campus visits and meeting the team are also critically important, right? Okay, so we've talked a lot about, all these things that you need to do, but the question is always, well, when do I need to do these things? So especially with NCAA division, 1 through 3, there's certain eligibility requirements on the coach's side and on the student athlete side. So we call them permissible contacts. So things you're allowed to do and things that you're not allowed to do. These change based on your year of enrollment in high school. So during your freshman year, academics are top dog, top priority. And you're going to find that academics are pretty much top priority every single year, but we'll get to that. But at this time, you should really be focusing on high school and outside competition athletically, going to camps. Maybe you fill out some recruiting questionnaires, but this is a time for you to just kind of shop around, make your college list. Maybe it's like an Excel template that you keep, just a list of schools that you might be interested in with the majors you're interested in and the coach's contact information. That's a really good starting point. Your sophomore year, we're going to launch some more success. Again, academics are still a top priority, but there are some other things that you can start doing. Coach Latimer talked about the emergence of social media and their importance. Most high school kids are putting together like better highlight reels than I ever saw existed, other than on a professional level, but you don't have to pay a lot of money to get really good material for, let's say, an Instagram account. It could just be you, running sprints and posting your times. It could just be you working on skills. So if you're a soccer player, soft touches on the ball, dribbling, different things that you can show a coach. You want to be like a Swiss Army knife. I have all of these different skills to offer you and your team, right? And also just like your personality, who you are as a person, while also being professional. This is also the time when you should start talking to whoever that support system that we talked about what your desire is, because there are going to be college coaches. If you're, have the ability to play at that level, they're going to be reaching out to the people who know you best. So that's your high school coaches, your club coaches, if you play club, your guidance counselor, athletic director, looking for, letters of recommendation. You want those people to know what you want, because you don't want a school you want nothing to do with talking to them, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm sure they'd be super interested, and it's not at all what you want, right? So have those conversations early and often. Keep them informed about where you're at. Same thing goes, with your parents, close family, everyone who's going to be your support system throughout this entire process, because you really do need a support system. You want them informed on what your desires are. The next thing that I'm going to say during your sophomore year is that recruiting questionnaire, and maybe being with a reputable recruiting platform. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to pay anyone to do that. There's plenty of free sites that college coaches can log on to. Like every single high school football player has a Huddle account, and our football coaches have access to go on there, see film highlights. So you want to make sure all of that stuff is updated and current. On most of these recruiting platforms, Huddle's one, NCSA, Captain U, there's a ton of them that are free and you can have an account. They'll tell you to list your academic, interests. If you're not really sure, just put undecided, because plenty of coaches will reach out to you and say, hey, here's what we're offering. Mass Maritime only has 7 majors. So most of the time I'm reaching out to someone, they're probably not going to say, oh, I want to be a ship captain. That's not usually top of their list. So it's me kind of advertising to them what we have to offer. Like Coach said, this is a two-way street, right? The next thing, I said this already, sports specific social media account. Great. And then your initial college visit. So this is a great time during your sophomore year, because in your junior year, we're going to discuss next, is when you become eligible for recruitment. So you'll see a lot of times at these big D1 schools, at day one that they become eligible, they're committed to North Carolina, Michigan. Obviously, some stuff was going on in the background, right? So in your sophomore year, you want to make sure you're posting those highlight reels, getting on coaches' radar. So when that recruitment window opens, you're top of their list as someone that they want to talk to get you onto their campus and get you committed. So, that list we made our freshman year on an Excel spreadsheet should start to be dwindling down a little bit, because, maybe I visited Mass Maritime and not a great fit for me. We hope that's not the case, but you're starting to wean down that list and figure out what your priority is going to be. Because also most college application fees are anywhere between 50 and $100. So if you go to your family and say, hey, here's my top 50 schools, they're probably going to be like, probably a few less if you can, right? So we want to make sure we're being really intentional about the type of school that we know that we're really interested in. Coach, if I can switch it over to you to talk about junior and senior year, which is really when, recruiting opens up for everyone.
Yeah. So like Michaela was saying, recruiting really picks up this time of year, going into that junior year. Academics, obviously, it's a number one priority. It's going to sound like a broken record, but it really is. It's going to be the first thing, no matter what year you're going into, especially, colleges want to look at how you did, junior year from the whole calendar year. And then start to look, when we talked about that Excel spreadsheet of that school list, look at, what days do these colleges have these prospect camps, or when is there, competition or tournaments that these colleges may be at. So really try to plan accordingly, because there's obviously a, budget for everybody. You don't want to go to a million camps and, be around all summer and spend a load of money. Really prioritize where you want your focus to be. If there's certain schools that you want to check out and have them see you. We talked about it earlier, keep filling out the recruiting questionnaires. I even encourage people sometimes, we deal with such a big volume here. For instance, at Mass Maritime, people get lost in our questionnaires all the time. If you don't hear back from a coach, right away, fill out another one. Like, we'll go through it all the time, but just if you're really interested in school, really follow up with them and stay on them. We talked about putting together a solid highlight reel, putting measurables, a recruiting profile. There's nothing better than when, I'm coming across a kid's Twitter page or his Huddle profile, and it's all really neatly organized. It has his name, height, weight, so his transcript can be attached. There's a lot of information in there, and then we can really plug that information into our database so that it matches up with everything that we need. Transcripts, I tell kids this all the time, before a kid or a coach, moves forward in the process, we need to see your transcripts. We have academic requirements here at Mass Maritime that are very important. We need to see your transcripts and have them, on a PDF file, whether if it's saved on your phone or your computer, whatever it may be. Just have that accessible and ask your guidance counselor. They're always going to try and help you. So if I need an unofficial transcript, make sure you have a copy so you can send it to a coach and it's not like it's, a wild goose chase, looking for your transcript. And then college visits your junior year, you can take unofficial visits, which basically can be at the Division II and Division I level where, you go, it could be a day visit, for instance, where everything is really out of your own pocket. So, you're obviously your travel, everything there is on your end, and it could be meals, any sort of purchases. It has to come out of your pocket. Official visits are when, they'll invite you up to campus. A lot of places, depending on where you're coming from, will cover your travel, whether you be, flying, it could be covering your hotel for your family that night. They'll pay for all your meals for that visit. And it's really kind of, those official visits are towards the end of the recruiting process to see, where you fit because you've shown enough interest in these schools. Now to the senior year, obviously it's, getting to the point where you really want to make a decision. And obviously, academics are number one priority. The biggest thing with your senior year grades, colleges are going to see that first quarter because, a lot of people have probably heard the senior slide method and, it's not something that we really like to talk about here, but, your first quarter grades are vitally important because colleges need to see that, are you getting it done right away and establishing it on the front end. And your athletic performance, it's kind of the same way. If you have a really good junior year and, you're doing well and you're hearing back from a lot of schools, you can't just coast into senior year and say, oh, I'm going to be just fine. If anything, you need to raise the level of your competition. And that's the second part right there. Continue to stay involved, with your high school. If you're doing club, any sort of competition, you have to keep staying on top of that. And then start getting the application processes going, applying to schools. We talked about, two-way communication with these coaches. Do they want you to go early action? Do they want you to go rolling? There's certain, colleges that have different processes with how they like to handle recruits. And you may be a guy they want to apply right away based on your grades. They know you can get in. And if you're really interested, they'll take you in, late August. It could be early September. Or they may say, hey, we want to see your second quarter grades, apply regular decision, and then let's hear back in the springtime. So there's never a rush. Everyone has a different path. It's more so trying to figure out what's the best fit for you when you're applying to these schools. And then, the constant communication. Like you said, the phone works both ways. Us coaches, we call kids all the time, but if you're really, into a school, make sure you have constant communication. Because there's kids that, we're interested in all the time. We call those, student athletes once a week. And if that's the same level that you have of interest for a school, try to reach out to them a week. And it doesn't have to be a, elongated conversation. It can be as simple as, hey, coach, good luck this week, rooting for you guys. It goes a long way and it still shows that you're interested in that school. Michaela touched on it earlier, shadow days, secondary visits. Really come see, the school again, but see the little details. And I think it's really important. We do it here all the time, matching up student athletes with our current guys on the team, seeing, the type of, person that's here, what their experience is, what they're majoring in. It goes a long way, especially at a specialized school, but anywhere, so really talk to these, players and ask them as many questions because as coaches, we kind of have a spiel that we always go by and, we kind of sound like a broken record at some point, but the kids, they won't lie to you. They'll just, not that we will, but these kids will just tell you straightforward. So, and then have the hard conversations. And this is something that's really not easy. And Michaela and I were talking about it earlier today. If there's a school that you're really, in love with and you want to go there and you want to play lacrosse and they haven't really hit you back, maybe it's just not the best fit. And it's the tough conversation of saying, maybe I need to move on from this school if I really want to pursue playing lacrosse in college. But the tough conversations, they're really hard in the moment, but after you have them, you feel much better because of how honest you are with yourself. And that's what's really important. And then when the time's right, having that communication with the coach of, acceptance, seeing merit packages, financial aid, when the proper time to commit is. Don't commit with a coach talking you into anything. Make sure the commitment comes from your end. A lot of coaches will try to push you into, hey, we need you to make a decision by this date. It's a big red flag, and we don't do that here. I can't speak for all schools, but the commitment should come from your end. So anytime a kid calls us and he says he wants to commit, that's when we go. But we really don't say, hey, you need to commit right now, because then you're really pressing someone to make a decision that they may not be ready to. So when the time is right, when you feel ready and prepared, call the coach, make sure your family's there, and just be clear with them, coach, this is where I want to be, this is where I want to commit, so that there's a clear line of communication.
Yeah, and at the Division III level, something I wanted to point out. So a lot of times you'll see these big high school signing ceremonies. They're a day to celebrate everyone's athletic achievement and that they've decided where they want to go to school. At the Division I and Division II level, so everyone signs what's called an NLI. It's a National Letter of Intent, and that's your intent to go compete there. You've been accepted and met their academic criteria as well, and that's an agreement between you and the school that you're going to go there. So at the Division III level, signing that paper and sending it into the school is not binding. So we do celebratory letters, but it's typically not binding on your end. So on my end, if I offer a roster spot or a tryout spot rather, to a student athlete, them signing that paper is just, a fun thing at their school. But if they on March 30th or May 30th say, hey coach, I'm actually not coming there anymore, there's nothing I can really do about that. I can't preclude them from going and competing somewhere else that they decided to go. That's not always the case at the D1 and D2 level. Sometimes that decision is binding, and there could be recruitment implications of you not being able to maybe transfer somewhere else or decide to go play somewhere else. So researching the differences between those is really important before you make that final decision. We talked really quickly about what effective communication or an email template might look like sending it to a coach. So this is just something we put together. So you can see that this person identifies themselves, identifies their recruiting class and where they play for high school. So, and then like Coach Latimer said, they point out something very specific about the school. I'm interested in your outstanding marine engineering program and your women's lacrosse program. So it's not just a cold call. It's, hey, this is really why I like Mass Maritime. They also say they have a 3.5 GPA. So as a coach, I know, okay, this person will be academically eligible or have a pretty good chance of admission at my school. They also do pay a compliment to the team. They've been following our record. And then they go into their athletic accolades. Okay, so you're an all conference player. They tell me what tournament they're going to be at, and then they have a call to action. So emailing is really great. I think for a lot of high school students now, it might seem kind of antiquated, but that's how a lot of coaches are going to communicate initially, at least. After I initially communicate with a recruit, if they've come for a visit, I'm usually texting them. Most of us, if people walk by our offices, it might look like we're playing a game on our phone, but most of the time I'm texting a recruit, watching a highlight video. We're working half the time from our phones. But initially, you do want to send a really professional email identifying yourself and having a call to action. This person says, I would love to come visit your campus this spring, see the facilities, meet the team. So they're telling me what they're looking for out of this interaction. You can see this is professional, actionable. They did their research on our institution. They spell checked it. And if they don't receive a response, we highly encourage people that they need to follow up. Like Coach Latimer said, especially at some of these really bigger institutions, they might be dealing with, we call it the funnel. Most college football programs at least start with a funnel of over like 20,000 people. And that's at the Division III level. At a big D1 school, it might be even more people who they have to sift through to get to those final people that they're going to offer a tryout or a roster spot to. So if you don't hear back, don't take offense to it. I would just say, continually follow up. If you haven't heard back for like a year, okay, yeah, maybe that's that hard conversation part. But everyone, has a job to do. So if it's been a week and you haven't heard back, just follow up. Hey, I just want to make sure you got my email. Most of the time they're going to be like, oh my gosh, I was on the road recruiting. I'm sorry I didn't get back to you. We'd love to have you on campus. Okay, so now comes to Kathy's part, who's our valuable resource here today. And I'm so grateful for her being here because this, I was the first person in my family to go to a 4-year college. So I remember the FAFSA being like the biggest, most stressful thing ever. I felt like I was a 17-year-old doing my taxes for the first time. I had no idea what was going on. So having a resource to talk about, how you're going to go through this process is really important. Nothing in life is free, obviously. Most colleges have a cost. Even at the service academies, you owe 4+ years of your life to the military after. So there's always going to be a cost to something, right? So I'm going to hand it over to Kathy, who can talk about the different types of financial assistance that an institution might be offering.
Sure, thanks, Michaela. So I'm going to start with kind of timelines in terms of the timeline you just saw, starting your freshman year in high school. The financial aid process starts a little bit later. In terms of submitting applications, that all happens your senior year of high school, but you can certainly do some footwork in advance, kind of research and whatnot. And the first thing you're going to look at when you're looking at schools is to find out, do they offer any kind of merit aid? Not just athletic scholarships, but are there other types of scholarships? Are there academic scholarships? Are there scholarships based on, you name it, schools have it. So you don't have to be the top student in your class. You may meet other criteria, but you really want to find out what schools, when you're putting your chart together in terms of the schools you're looking at, you do want to have a column that indicates what kind of merit aid they have. And merit aid has nothing to do with your family's financial situation. It's all strictly something based on something unique about you, whether it's your athletic performance, your academic performance, what have you. They're not looking at finances at all. And most schools are going to initiate that process through their admission office. So even if you're working with athletics, they're certainly going to be working hand in hand with the admissions office. But typically when admissions is making their decisions on whether or not you've been accepted, at that time, they're typically also making decisions on any kind of merit aid that you're receiving. If you do receive merit aid, a couple things to keep in mind, particularly great questions to ask up front. You don't want to find things out once you're at the school and kind of committed. If you receive any kind of merit aid, is it renewable? Am I going to get this aid every year? Like Michaela said, if I break my leg or what have you, if I'm not playing the sport anymore, if it's an athletic scholarship, will I lose that scholarship, and how's that going to impact my ability to pay my bill at the school? A lot of merit aid also requires that the student maintain a certain grade point average. If they're competitive scholarships, usually they're kind of up above the 3.0 level, but certainly you want to find out, number one, is this renewable? And number two, in order to renew it, is there anything I have to do to make that happen? And so that's kind of the first type, merit aid, strictly based on you. The other type of aid that we haven't talked about quite yet is what we call need-based financial aid. And that's financial aid, has nothing to do with your athletic ability or your academic performance. It's strictly based on family financial information. And every school in the country is going to ask, if you're applying for this kind of financial aid, that you fill out a FAFSA, which is a federal application. It stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. Your guidance office is very familiar with it. And that's something you're going to do in the fall of your senior year in high school. And on that form, you're reporting parent income, parent assets like savings and investments and things like that, as well as student income and student assets. And once the form gets processed, it's sent automatically to whatever school you want it to be sent to. You have an option to list up to 10 schools at a time to have the results sent. And once the financial aid office receives that information, they're going to use that information to determine what other types of financial aid you might qualify for. And when it comes to merit-based aid, it typically falls in one of three categories. It's either free money, which is money that you don't have to pay back, which is the best kind of money to get. It could be aid in the form of offering you a job, typically on campus, or it could be in the form of a student loan, which is money that's being lent to you while you're in school with the agreement that you're going to pay that back once you leave school. And when you submit that FAFSA, typically you're being considered for all types of aid. You don't have to apply separately for the free money versus the work versus the loan. When you fill out the FAFSA, another piece of information, and this is something I would recommend putting on your spreadsheet that you're going to create, is in addition to the FAFSA, does the school require any other paperwork from me? There's another financial aid form that about half of the private schools in the country require students to fill out. It's called a profile form. Again, something that you do during your senior year of high school, but definitely you want to find out, and visiting the financial aid page on any college website, you're going to find that probably front and center in terms of what forms you need to fill out to apply for financial aid. And most importantly, what is the deadline to get this paperwork into them? Oftentimes money is limited. And so if you miss a deadline, you may be missing out on quite a bit of financial aid as well. So certainly, what forms do I need for this particular school? And what's the deadline to get all this information into the school? Sorry, I'm looking at my notes here real quick to make sure. A lot of folks typically, when they get all the financial information, when they look at the costs for the school and kind of do the math to figure out, what's the bottom line, what's going to come out of our pocket, can we do this? Can we cover this balance? You want to remember that it's not just this 1 year that you need to worry about, but it's 4 years that you need to worry about. So if you can come up with this money in the first year, certainly plan ahead and make sure that you're still financially able to come to the school in the second, third, and fourth year. And again, there are tough conversations that you heard about from Coach Latimer in terms of, if you don't hear back from the school, maybe this isn't the school for me. Financially, that's also a tough conversation to have. We highly recommend that this become really a family conversation. Some students, you might have no idea how much money is going to be available to you in terms of paying for college. And so a lot of students, we highly recommend that you go through this process together, filling out the forms, understanding what the costs are, understanding how much is going to come out of pocket, and whether that's going to be out of your pocket or perhaps your parents' pocket. Very important conversations to have, because there are some families that everything is great, everything works out well, but there's no way we're going to meet these costs. And so certainly you want to have those frank decisions kind of upfront and early on if you need to. When it comes to, let me go back a little bit to the need-based financial aid. So as I mentioned, there's free money, and that can come in the form of grants, scholarships, waivers, things like that. Again, that's just money that's taken off the bill, goes right against your charges. Work opportunities, most colleges will offer something called federal work study, which is really an opportunity for a student to work usually on campus or somewhere locally in the community, and earn some pocket money. It's the one type of financial aid that doesn't go toward your bill. It's really meant to help you. We understand that in addition to the bill that you've got with us, you're also going to have some out-of-pocket expenses, shampoo, toothpaste. We certainly hope you're showering and brushing your teeth and things like that. And so the work study is often an opportunity for students to work a few hours a week. It's definitely doable. We even have athletes, I'm playing football in the fall. Can I wait and perhaps start the work study in the spring? Most schools are very flexible. We have some kids that work 1 or 2 hours a week, just enough to buy that toothpaste and shampoo and whatnot. So that's an opportunity really to meet some of your out-of-pocket expenses. And then the third type I mentioned, loans, federal loans, student loans, state loans, school loans, depends on the institutions that you're looking at. Again, this is money that you're borrowing with the agreement that you're going to pay it back. And so you want to find out things like, how long do I have to pay it back? Does it have to be paid back, right away? Do I have 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever the case may be? You want to understand what the terms are that you're signing for before you actually commit to borrowing that money. When it comes to loans in student names, the amounts that you can borrow is fairly limited. It's often not enough to cover all of your costs. And so oftentimes parents do have to get involved with what we call credit-based loans, which are loans that either the parent takes out for the student or the student takes out in their own name, but with a parent a co-signer because they need to have someone with strong credit history to help them secure the loan. And so as you're figuring this out, typically timeline wise, you're going to fill out the FAFSA, you're going to fill out any other financial aid paperwork that's required in advance. Once you hear from financial aid in terms of what kind of need-based financial aid you've received, once you know what kind of merit aid you're getting, again, scholarships, athletic or otherwise, and then do the math. And at that point, you'll be able to kind of come up with an idea of what is it going to cost us out of pocket to make this happen. And again, not just for my freshman year in college, but for all 4 years that I'm in college. Is this something that we can do as a family? I highly recommend that students and parents with any questions at all reach out to the financial aid office at the school that you're deciding to go to. We're there to help. It's our job to make this work for you. And certainly reaching out with any questions or concerns you might have is the way to go. You know, we're coming up a little bit short. Is there anything that can be done? Some schools will say yes, some schools will say no, but it does not hurt to ask. If you don't ask, it may not happen. So certainly in addition to looking at schools, if they're going to be a fit for you academically, athletically, you also want to see if it's going to be a fit financially for not just you, but for your family as well.
And that's such a great point, Kathy, about, you know, the timeline and figuring out if it's that fit. One of the things I wanted to mention when we talked about that timeline, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year, there's an important reason that I don't list time to commit in your junior year. And that's because your federal financial aid takes into consideration your family's W-2s from the previous fiscal year. That's what they're basing them off of. Your entire, you know, financial picture from the previous fiscal year. So you might not have your full financial picture until January or February of your senior year. So it's all well and good that you might want to commit to a school, you know, in the end of your junior year and say, this is my dream school, this is where I'm going, but it might not be feasible for you to have a full financial picture at that point. So if finances are, you know, a big factor in your decision, it might not be the best thing emotionally. I don't know, like committing to a school was a big deal for me. So if I had done that in my junior year and then, you know, it comes senior year and, oh, there's no way I'm going to be able to go to this school, that would have been really a difficult thing to go through. So that's why, especially as coaches, I mean, Coach Latimer said it, we don't push anyone to make that decision until you, your family, any supporters and decision makers in that process are ready to make that decision. Like we said, D1, D2, there's a lot of different factors that go into the athletics piece of it. They offer full multi-year athletic scholarships. So they might be able to tell you in your junior year, yeah, we're promising you, you know, a full financial, you know, scholarship, which are pretty rare. I'll put that out there, pretty rare. And you'll probably know pretty early on if you're someone who might be eligible for something like that. But that's why you might see someone from, you know, UNC committing day one of their eligibility junior year, whereas D3, even D2, you're waiting a little while longer to get that full financial picture. So I just wanted to put that athletics context into the financial aid process. And Kathy, I don't know if you had anything else to add, but that was all that we had for today before we're opening up for questions.
Nope, I think oftentimes financial aid is the forgotten stepchild kind of at the end of the process, but certainly an important piece of the decision making. But certainly I would be more than happy to answer any questions that folks might have.
Thank you all so much. That was so much great information. And I'm sure that there are some questions in the room. So if anyone wants to, you can ask a question by unmuting yourself if you'd like. You're also welcome to type a question in the chat. Much to think about. I know we have folks with students of all different ages in the room as well. So
I have a quick question for the coaches. I think one of the questions I get often from student athletes and actually probably more so parents is those recruiting services. And you mentioned a few reputable recruiting services. Are there any that you'd be willing to talk about? Maybe not, you know, officially put in a plug for, but you know, do you recommend our parents going down that road of a reputable recruiting source?
Jackson, do you want to take this one?
Yeah. I really think it's all depending on what you're really looking to get out of it. I think one, you guys probably may know it's NCSA. It's a very affordable one. You know, it's basically, you know, creating your recruiting profile on there. You can basically draft emails in it and blast it to coaches all over the country. I would say, looking at it nowadays, the best resource that students can use are their high school coaches. And I think we talked about it over the timeline period. Having that conversation with the high school coach saying that you want to go, play lacrosse at the Division II, Division I level, and you tell them a list of schools and they may have a list for you, as long as they're, keep their promise of reaching out to those schools, I think it's a really good opportunity because it's really free of charge and they know you better than a recruiting service that you may be paying for monthly. Obviously, this is just my opinion of it, but I really think personal interaction and, personal relationships will go a lot longer than, a form of business that's going to try and get you to where you want to go. So I would say big picture, you can obviously look into them if it's something that, people want to explore, but I think there's a lot better resources out there that kids and parents can use to fulfill their dreams.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the thing I'll say about NCSA, so the CRM or platform we use for recruiting is called FrontRush. FrontRush acquired NCSA. So if you are an institution who uses FrontRush, which most of my friends that I know do use FrontRush for athletics recruiting at other institutions, you automatically get access to the entire NCSA recruiting database. So if there was one that I would say like best bang for your buck, it's probably going to be that one. And if you play club, travel, anything like that, they probably have their own platform that they're also going to promote to you that might be wrapped up in, your tuition and fees for whatever travel that you do. But something else Coach Latimer talked about earlier that's completely free and most of our student athletes are perfectly capable of doing themselves is just creating an Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, their own account that you can go on and follow all the schools that you want. And they're allowed to follow you on there. There's a certain level of engagement. They're allowed to like things. They can't really tag you in anything, but you'll know if a school's interested, you'll see them watching your story. So that's something completely free of charge where you can market yourself with even your high school film or high school stats and put it right on there too.
Great advice. Thank you. And I know students it's much faster and easier for them than it would feel to me at, whatever age I am. So for our adults in the room, the kids can do it. We know they can. Other questions from our parents or anything else from Mr. Jones?
I'll just give a quick shout out to Christopher Newhook, who knew the show I was talking about, Last Chance U. So thank you for that in the chat.
Awesome. I wasn't sure if you were going to say cheer because I think that was also took place at a junior college. But
that one was pretty intense. Different world.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much to Mass Maritime. Hopefully this is the beginning of, a long relationship with our institutions. I think it's an interesting fit and lots of great opportunities. So.
Yeah, we appreciate, I know time is like everyone's most valuable asset. So I appreciate you, letting us take about an hour and a half of your time to go through all of this. It's what we love to do. And, we kind of started with this. So I'd love to end with the theme that if there's a will, there's a way. If you, or, I don't know who's a student athlete, who's a parent, but if you're a student athlete who wants the opportunity to play at that next level, there's going to be a fit for you somewhere. Like I said, if it's at the club level, if you're going to find a way to continue that passion. And also shameless plug for coaching. You do not have to be a rock star athlete to get involved in coaching and make such an impactful difference. I know my sport is dying for youth referees, for officials, dying for youth coaches. So getting involved at that next level is a way to continue a lifelong passion for your sport, even if it's not playing at that NCAA level in college. So I really just want to thank you all for giving us a little bit of your time tonight. And I hope that everyone took at least a little bit of something away from it.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Take care and be well, everyone.